The fluorescent glow of the computer screen illuminated the quiet corner of the living room as Annika adjusted her scarf for the third time. Her hand lingered at the edge of the patterned fabric, smoothing it gently over the faint stubble on her scalp. The chemo had taken her hair, but not her dignity, or so she kept reminding herself. It was a Friday morning, and like every Friday for the past 6 months, she'd shown up. Logged in. Smiled through meetings. Managed her team. She had learned to time her treatments, chemo every Friday afternoon, so she could recover over the weekend and be ready for work by Monday. That had been her rhythm. Pain behind the scenes, professionalism in front. Now, the screen glowed with a zoom grid. 4 small boxes. In one of them, sat Everett Cole, the Chief Strategy Officer of Crestwell Media Group. In the others, 3 unfamiliar faces from HR, one of whom was still adjusting her headset. Annika smiled politely. "Good morning." Everett didn't return the smile. "Annika, thank you for joining. We'll keep this brief." A strange chill ran through her. "We've reviewed your quarterly metrics," he continued. "And we've noticed a concerning trend. Your productivity has not been in alignment with company expectations." Annika blinked. "I'm sorry? Your client acquisition numbers are significantly lower than your peers. You've missed 3 growth targets this quarter alone," Everett said, his tone matter-of-fact. "Crestwell is entering a phase of aggressive scaling, and we need every leader to deliver. Unfortunately, that's not what we've seen from you." She opened her mouth, then closed it. Her heart began to pound. This wasn't feedback. This was a script. "With that in mind," he continued, "the leadership team has made the difficult decision to end your employment, effective immediately." The HR woman finally looked up. "We'll be sending you your final paycheck by next Friday," she said in a rehearsed tone. "Your access to company systems will be deactivated at the conclusion of this call. We also ask that you return all Crestwell-owned devices within 5 business days." It landed like a slap. Annika didn't cry. She didn't argue. She sat straighter and folded her hands in her lap. "I've maintained every one of my client relationships," she said, her voice calm. "Even through my cancer treatment. Last week, Greystone Hotels renewed their contract. Seabreeze Resorts expanded theirs." Everett sighed. "Client retention is valuable, but not sufficient. What matters now is growth, measurable, aggressive growth. We appreciate your dedication during difficult personal circumstances. But sentiment doesn't drive results." Difficult personal circumstances. He said it like she'd been on a sabbatical, not battling for her life. Like cancer was a scheduling inconvenience. "I understand," Annika said, though she didn't. "Not really. Not yet." Her body ached, not from disease, but from the weight of this betrayal. "Thank you for the opportunity." Everett nodded once, without warmth. "We wish you all the best." The screen went black as the call ended. And just like that, 15 years at Crestwell were erased with a click. Moments later, a chime. New email, from Peter Rosenthal, CEO, Greystone Hotels. "Looking forward to our campaign strategy session next week. Your insights are always sharp. Couldn't imagine launching without you." They didn't know. The clients hadn't been informed. No transition, no explanation. Just silence. As Annika sat staring at the message, her phone buzzed. It was Maya, her closest friend and co-worker at Crestwell. "Annika," Maya said before she could speak, her voice thick with anger. "I just got off the company-wide. They told everyone you were let go for poor performance." Everett said, she took a breath, "that you'd become a legacy burden during the scaling phase." Annika gripped the edge of her desk. "A what?" "They implied. Well, basically said that you'd been coasting. That your illness made you unreliable." She didn't respond. She couldn't. It wasn't just a firing. It was character assassination. After the call, Annika sat still for a long time. Her husband, Samir, was out grocery shopping with their 2 children, Nina, 8, and Arjun, 11. She would have to tell them. She didn't know how. Her phone buzzed again. Maya had texted. "This wasn't just sudden. I think they've been planning it for weeks." Annika believed her. She wasn't always a threat. When she joined Crestwell Media Group 15 years ago, it was a mid-sized firm struggling to differentiate in a saturated market. Annika had started as a junior brand strategist, young, ambitious, and burning with ideas. Within 3 years, she had become the architect of the company's boutique hospitality niche. While competitors chased volume, she focused on relationships. Her clients didn't just renew, they grew. 10 years in, she had a corner office, led a team of 12, and managed the company's largest accounts. She was, by all accounts, indispensable. Then 6 months ago, everything changed. Stage 2 breast cancer. Annika had taken the news the way she took everything, methodically. She told her husband, her kids, her team. Then she scheduled her treatments for Friday afternoons so she could recover by Monday. She didn't ask for leave. She didn't want special treatment. She kept working, even when her hands trembled from the medication. And then Everett Cole arrived. Fresh from a consulting firm, brought in to modernize operations and streamline inefficiencies. He spoke in buzzwords: agile scaling, bottom line restructuring, value alignment. Annika had tried to stay optimistic. But it didn't take long to see where it was heading. Everett introduced new efficiency metrics based entirely on short-term KPIs. He stopped including her in strategic meetings. Dismissed her relationship-driven strategies as soft. And when she tried to push back, when she explained that client satisfaction couldn't always be measured in numbers, he listened with a bored smile and moved on. Still, she hadn't expected this. Samir found her in the same position an hour later. "They fired you," he said softly. She nodded. "Why?" She handed him her laptop, still open to the Greystone email. "They said I wasn't putting in enough effort." He stared at her, disbelief quickly turning into anger. "Effort? You worked through chemo. You took meetings from the infusion chair." "I know. What are we going to do about insurance? About the treatment?" "I don't know," she whispered. He knelt beside her, rested his forehead against her knees. "We'll figure it out," he said. But his voice trembled. That night, after the kids were asleep, Annika opened a new folder on her personal hard drive and titled it, Crestwell Archive. Inside, she began uploading everything: client emails, campaign plans, performance reports, internal memos. Every positive review. Every renewal. Every award. She wasn't planning revenge. But she was planning. Because they hadn't just fired a marketing director. They had discarded a survivor. A strategist. A builder. And they had no idea what she was about to become next. Monday morning arrived with the ghost of routine. Annika's body, still tuned to her former schedule, woke her at 6:45 a.m. She stared at the ceiling, no longer sure whether she was supposed to reach for her work laptop, or grieve its absence. The house was silent except for the creak of her son Arjun's door as he got ready for school. She moved slowly, her joints still aching from last week's chemo, but there was a new stiffness in her limbs, not from sickness, but resolve. She had spent the weekend organizing. Every email. Every quarterly report. Every campaign strategy she'd ever led. Her hard drive, once just a backup, now resembled a war chest. By 8:30 a.m., she sat at her kitchen table with a cup of green tea, scanning through her documentation with a meticulous eye. There it was, her latest performance review, dated 2 months ago. Annika remains an invaluable leader, with exceptional client retention and brand-building instincts. Her contributions to the Greystone expansion and Seabreeze relaunch were exemplary. Signed and sealed by the former VP of Marketing, before he'd stepped aside under Everett Cole's restructuring. And yet, Everett's Zoom dismissal had cited months of underperformance. She opened another folder. This one contained client feedback forms, internal recognition emails, and KPIs broken down by campaign. One by one, she matched them against Everett's public claims from the recent all-hands meeting, thanks to a recording Maya had covertly sent her. In the clip, Everett spoke coolly. "As part of Crestwell's commitment to future-focused scalability, we've had to make tough personnel decisions. Some individuals, despite past contributions, had not adapted to our growth expectations. We cannot carry legacy inefficiencies forward." Legacy inefficiencies. That was how he'd categorized her. The woman who had created their first brand loyalty algorithm. The woman who pitched and won Crestwell's first luxury eco-client. The woman who kept showing up, even while fighting cancer. No. This wasn't just about performance. This was a pattern. Later that day, Maya called again. "Don't quote me," she whispered, "but Everett's bringing in someone from his last firm, Nova Stream Strategies. Her name's Lindsay Crane. She's already on the payroll." Annika didn't recognize the name. "She's young," Maya added awkwardly. "No real hospitality background, but big in SaaS and media. Lots of influencer marketing, no long game experience." A replacement. Annika almost laughed. Of course Everett had planned this. From the moment he stepped in, he'd begun grooming the team toward his idea of growth: metrics over relationships, automation over nuance, volume over value. Maya continued, he told the team you had performance gaps due to personal obligations. That's why Lindsay is taking over your clients. Annika's grip tightened on her mug. He's rewriting the narrative, Maya added. He wants your exit to look like a step forward, not a betrayal. I'm not surprised, Annika said. But I'm not done either. By Wednesday, Annika had made 3 key moves. First, she scheduled a consultation with a workplace attorney, referred by Leonard, her old mentor and former executive at Crestwell. The lawyer, Nadia Lynn, reviewed the termination documentation and Everett's internal communications with practiced concern. They're playing a dangerous game, Nadia said, scanning Everett's statements. Presenting your medical accommodations as absenteeism? That edges into discrimination territory. If you worked through treatment and never officially took leave, this misrepresentation could be significant. Do I have a case? Annika asked. Maybe, Nadia said. But that's not always the fastest path to justice. The question is, what do you want? Annika paused, surprised by the clarity of her answer. I want the truth to surface. And I want to protect the people he's still targeting. Nadia smiled. Then we build the story. The second move was more personal. Annika reached out to 3 of her biggest former clients, Greystone Hotels, Seabreeze Resorts, and Marlowe and Finch Travel Collective. She explained that she was no longer with Crestwell, and while she couldn't comment on internal decisions, she thanked them for their trust over the years. Every single one of them responded with shock. We weren't even notified of the change, wrote Greystone's CEO. I don't understand. You led our best campaign in 2 years, said Seabreeze's director. Frankly, we won't proceed until we get clarity, responded Marlowe and Finch's co-founder. Relationships. The one thing Everett could never automate. Annika's third move came after a late-night email from Maya. Jamie from finance told me Everett's pushing for a Q2 acquisition. He's consolidating departments to make the company more sellable. It was the final puzzle piece. She remembered what Leonard once told her about NovaStream Strategies, Everett's old company. He'd gutted the executive team in under a year, boosted short-term numbers, and left after a buyout. Sound familiar? Annika pulled out her old campaign strategy for Crestwell's long-term hospitality growth. She opened her most recent quarterly report. She flipped through customer satisfaction surveys. None of Everett's metrics showed this side. Because they weren't meant to. That Friday, a week after her firing, Annika uploaded her full dossier to a private online folder. She titled it Crestwell, The Record. She shared it with Nadia, her attorney. Then with Leonard. Then with the 3 clients who had already expressed concern. None of it was emotional. It was organized. Clean. Measured. She wasn't looking for sympathy. She was offering proof. That evening, Greystone's CEO emailed back. Thank you for this. I think we need to have a serious conversation with Crestwell's board. By Sunday, Maya sent another message. Everett knows something's happening. He's trying to quiet the internal unrest. But people are asking questions. Especially when Greystone threatened to pull out. Annika simply replied. Let them ask. She had no title. No corporate badge. No office. But she had something far more powerful. The truth. And once truth enters the room, numbers can no longer hide the story. By Monday morning, Crestwell Media Group was starting to crack at the seams. Everett Cole, the architect of the so-called scalability pivot, had tightened the ship so ruthlessly that now, with the tide shifting, there was little room left to maneuver. On the surface, everything appeared calm: press releases about growth strategy, smiling LinkedIn updates from his new hire Lindsay Crane, and a leadership team parroting his metrics-focused mantra. But behind closed doors, questions were multiplying like wildfire. Annika watched from a distance. At 7 a.m., she received a message from Maya. Greystone's off the calendar. Pulled the Q2 launch. No explanation given. Everett is freaking. By 8:30, another text arrived, this time from Jamal, one of the lead graphic designers Annika used to work closely with. Client services just pushed back. Said Lindsay's presentation had no strategic insight and failed to align with Seabreeze's tone. She used a template. A template. Annika didn't reply. She didn't need to. The dominoes had started falling. At 9 a.m., Annika met with Leonard and Nadia in a cozy downtown cafe. Leonard looked exhausted but vindicated. "The board is skittish," he said, stirring sugar into his tea. "They've seen the dossier you compiled. They know the metrics Everett gave them were selective at best, and outright manipulative at worst." Nadia nodded. "They're now in dangerous territory. If they ignore this and still push through an acquisition based on false performance data, they risk liability, especially if investor decisions are based on it." Annika sipped her coffee, letting the words settle. "Are they prepared to admit that?" Leonard gave a humorless smile. "They'll never say it publicly. But internally? The tide's turning." She exhaled, not from relief, but preparation. "And what about the team still inside?" "Scared," Leonard said. "Some of them are clinging to the hope that Everett's plan will stabilize. Others are just waiting to jump ship." Nadia leaned forward. "You started something rare, Annika. You gave them a voice. Most people walk away. You documented, you proved, and you stayed composed. The right people are noticing." Annika didn't feel like a crusader. She felt tired. But purpose, that, she had in abundance. By Tuesday, the cracks became fractures. Greystone Hotels officially pulled out. Their CEO, Peter Rosenthal, didn't mince words. He released a statement praising long-standing relationships and criticizing short-termism disguised as innovation. Annika's inbox lit up with media alerts. Within hours, Crestwell's marketing team scrambled to clarify the situation, but the damage had been done. The press smelled blood in the water. Then came Marlowe and Finch. They followed Greystone's lead, canceling their renewal and citing disruptive transitions in account leadership. 2 legacy clients, gone in 48 hours. It wasn't just a PR nightmare. It was revenue hemorrhage. That evening, Maya called again. She sounded breathless, like she'd just come out of battle. Jamie was reinstated. "What?" Annika blinked. "They fired her." "I know. But the board overrode it. HR called her back this morning and apologized, Annika. I don't even think HR knows how to do that." "And Everett?" Maya hesitated. "Still standing. But they've limited his executive access. He's been excluded from 3 key leadership syncs. Word is, the investors are discussing interim leadership options." Annika didn't speak right away. "Do you want back in?" Maya asked gently. Annika looked out the window. Her daughter, Nina, was running barefoot across the backyard, chasing bubbles in the wind. Annika had promised herself that if she ever got through chemo, she'd stop sacrificing everything for a badge or a business card. "No," she said simply. "I have everything I need." Maya exhaled. "Good. Because I think the rest of us might follow your example." On Wednesday, the whispers inside Crestwell became thunder. Everett's carefully curated narrative began to unravel under scrutiny. Data analysts on the operations team found discrepancies in his department-wide reports, selective omissions, padded projections, and client satisfaction scores that had been scrubbed clean of red flags. Someone leaked screenshots to internal Slack channels. By noon, HR was overwhelmed with anonymous complaints. By 2 p.m., Lindsay Crane resigned. By 4 p.m., Everett was placed on administrative leave pending internal investigation. The announcement went out in an internal email titled Leadership Transition. It was signed not by Everett, but by the board itself. Annika stood in the baking aisle at the grocery store when she got the message. Maya had forwarded the email with a caption. "You did it." She stared at her phone for a long moment. Then she grabbed the flour and moved on. Victory wasn't a parade. It was a quiet aisle in a supermarket, your name finally cleared, your health intact, your kids safe at home. That night, over dinner, her husband Samir toasted her with a glass of mango juice. To the woman who didn't let cancer, or corruption, win. Nina clinked her plastic cup against hers. "To mommy." Annika laughed, eyes misting. "To us," she said. "And to whatever's next." Thursday morning, her new office buzzed with energy. At Garrison Publishing, she was settling into her role as director of brand strategy. Her team was small but passionate, and the company culture was everything Crestwell had stopped being: empathetic, creative, long-term focused. She walked past a glass conference room and paused at the whiteboard. "Every hotel tells a story. Make it unforgettable." It was one of her favorite sayings. She used to write it on post-its back at Crestwell, long before anyone listened. Now, it was printed across the top of every campaign brief. Annika smiled. She didn't need a war anymore. She was writing a legacy. Friday morning dawned cloudy in Chicago, but inside the boardroom of Crestwell Media Group, storm clouds of a different kind were brewing. The company's executive board had convened an emergency session, summoned by the firm's three largest investors after what they called the critical loss of strategic direction. On the table were several key documents: client termination letters, leaked internal reports, investor emails, and, most damning of all, a 47-page dossier titled The Complete Record, compiled by a former employee, Annika Desai. Although Annika was no longer physically present within Crestwell, her name was on everyone's lips. Her dossier, delivered with calm precision and undeniable evidence, had set off a chain reaction. It laid bare not only the deception behind her firing but also the larger-scale manipulation orchestrated by Everett Cole, misrepresented data, gutted relationships, and a ruthless campaign of disinformation aimed at securing a short-term acquisition. The reckoning had arrived. Meanwhile, just 10 blocks away, Annika was in a sunlit meeting room at Garrison Publishing's headquarters, presenting an integrated branding proposal for their international literary hotel series. She wore a soft teal blouse, her headscarf tied confidently in a turban style. Her presentation was smooth, focused, and wildly well received. "You're bringing in a completely fresh approach to identity-driven hospitality," Garrison's VP of Development said, clearly impressed. "It's the perfect blend of story and strategy." Annika smiled. "Hotels aren't just buildings," she replied. "They're experiences. People want to feel something the moment they walk through the door." She didn't mention that the foundational ideas had been in her Crestwell archive for years, dismissed as too poetic by Everett during one of their final strategy meetings. Now they were being celebrated as visionary. The irony wasn't lost on her. Back at Crestwell, the fallout deepened. The internal investigation revealed that Everett had not only exaggerated cost-saving projections but had also removed negative client feedback from board reports. Lindsay Crane's hiring had circumvented HR protocols, and her salary had been hidden under a restructured consulting fee. Worse still, several veteran employees had been forced out within days of their stock option vesting dates, a pattern repeated across departments. Annika's own termination had proven to be the key that unlocked the entire house of cards. By noon, the board had taken action. Everett Cole was officially terminated for cause. His severance and bonuses were rescinded, pending possible legal proceedings. A public statement was released to employees and press, carefully worded. Crestwell Media Group acknowledges recent internal failures in strategic oversight and personnel decisions. We are committed to restoring transparency, rebuilding client trust, and correcting past missteps. But inside the company, it was anything but calm. Jamal, the graphic designer, messaged Annika that afternoon. "It's surreal in here. Jamie's back. Maya's being asked to join the client strategy group. You're practically a legend." Annika replied simply. "Be good to each other. That's how the rebuild begins." She didn't need to be part of the resurrection. Her time with Crestwell was over. But the people? They still mattered. And the clients? They remembered who had fought for them. That weekend, Annika received a surprising call from Eleanor St. James, managing director of Horizon Equity, Crestwell's primary investor. "Ms. Desai," Eleanor began warmly, "I'd like to extend a personal thank you. Your documentation helped us prevent a catastrophic miscalculation." "I didn't do it for the company," Annika replied, honestly but not unkindly. "I did it for the people still inside it. The ones who didn't have the power to speak." "And still," Eleanor said, "you chose professionalism over vengeance. That's rare." There was a pause. "We'd like to offer you a position, VP of Brand Culture, leading a complete overhaul of client experience strategy." Annika was silent for a moment. "I appreciate the offer," she said finally, "but I've found a place where I don't have to earn my humanity. Garrison values me not as a comeback story, but as a strategist." Eleanor respected the decision. "If you ever change your mind, the door is open." Annika thanked her and hung up. It wasn't about proving herself anymore. She already had. On Monday, the Hospitality Weekly newsletter arrived in Annika's inbox with the subject line: "The Resilience of Relationships, Why People Still Matter." The top feature? A story about Garrison Publishing's literary hotel brand and the refreshingly human strategy driving its recent success. Her name was there. Not buried. Not as an asterisk. Not after someone else's. But as the lead strategist behind the campaign. She forwarded the article to Samir with a wink emoji and a note. "Guess I still have it." He texted back. "You never lost it. They just stopped seeing it." Later that week, Maya and Jamie invited Annika to a small dinner at a cozy rooftop restaurant in the city. The sun dipped low on the skyline as laughter replaced the tension they'd all carried for months. "I still can't believe you brought the whole company to its knees," Jamie joked, raising a glass. All with a spreadsheet and a calm tone. "You weren't just graceful under fire," Maya added. "You rewrote the rules." Annika smiled, watching the city lights flicker into life. "I didn't want revenge. I just wanted truth. And a little bit of justice." "You got both," Maya said. "And then some." That night, Annika returned home to find Nina asleep on the couch with a blanket and a drawing pad resting on her chest. Samir quietly pointed to the page, beaming. In crayon, Nina had drawn a little stick figure version of Annika standing in front of a tall building labeled Desai Hotels. In a speech bubble, her figure said, "Welcome. We're so glad you're here." Tears filled Annika's eyes. Not for what she lost, but for what she'd reclaimed. Her voice. Her purpose. Her legacy. And for the first time in a long time, she no longer felt like a survivor. She felt like a builder again. 3 months later, Annika Desai stood on a glass balcony overlooking the Santa Fe foothills. The air was crisp with the scent of juniper and distant desert rain. Below her, construction crews worked steadily on the final phase of Garrison Publishing's newest boutique property, the Marlowe, a literary-themed hotel steeped in old-world charm and contemporary design. It was her first major project since joining Garrison, and everything about it carried her signature. The hand-carved entry arch. The curated reading lounges based on world genres. The scent profile, sandalwood and citrus, just subtle enough to say intelligence meets warmth. It was more than a hotel. It was her comeback story, built not from revenge, but from restoration. And in 3 weeks, it would open with a ribbon-cutting ceremony, attended by city officials, journalists, and industry insiders. Her name was printed on the invitations. Creative Director, Garrison Brand Experiences. No more ghostwriting other people's ideas. No more watching her work launched under someone else's title. She was where she belonged. Inside her suite, Annika reviewed the agenda for that afternoon's strategy session. Garrison was expanding internationally, Tokyo, Barcelona, Dublin, and her team was spearheading the global branding rollout. For the first time in years, she wasn't navigating politics or playing defense. She was building freely. The team she had assembled included people Crestwell had once cast aside, a mid-career art director from a scrapped agency acquisition, a former hospitality marketer who'd been laid off after returning from maternity leave, and Jamie, yes, that Jamie, who had joined her after finally deciding to leave Crestwell for good. Together, they weren't just designing campaigns. They were reimagining what it meant for a brand to have soul. One of the most satisfying changes since her departure from Crestwell had been the ripple effect her truth had triggered, not just inside the company, but across the hospitality industry. Several mid-sized firms quietly reached out to her in the weeks that followed Everett's ousting, asking for advice on how to balance operational efficiency with human-centered marketing. Annika took those calls. Not because she owed anyone, but because she remembered what it felt like to fight alone. She now consulted informally with 2 women's leadership organizations, mentoring others who had faced corporate betrayal under the guise of performance metrics or strategic realignment. "I was never weak," she once told a group of attendees on a webinar. "I was fighting 2 battles, cancer and erasure. And I didn't lose either." At home, things had grown brighter. Samir, ever steady, had picked up more hours teaching art therapy classes, giving them a little financial breathing room in the early days. But once Annika's full-time role at Garrison stabilized, he scaled back to be more present with Nina and Arjun. Family dinners became a ritual again. Tuesdays were always pasta night, Thursdays were no-tech evenings, and Sundays meant board games, whether the kids liked it or not. One Thursday evening, as they played Scrabble, Arjun asked casually, "Mom, are you famous now?" Annika laughed. "What makes you ask that?" "Because Maya said you're in a magazine and people are copying your hotel." "Well," she said, smiling, "I'm not famous. But maybe I helped remind people how to do things right." Nina nodded sagely. "You told the truth when nobody else would. That's brave." Annika felt a lump form in her throat. Not for what she had been through, but for how deeply her children had seen it. At Crestwell, the rebuilding had continued, But it was a long road. Leadership had changed. 2 more board members stepped down quietly, and interim executives brought back a relationship-first model that closely resembled Danica's original playbook. Ironically, some of her strategy templates, previously dismissed by Everett, were now being distributed across departments as foundational materials. Her phone buzzed often with messages from former co-workers. "We miss your leadership. You were right all along. Everett's name is basically Voldemort here now." She responded to each with grace. She held no grudges, only memories. And those memories fueled her vision for what could be better. The Marlowe opened on a golden September morning with a soft breeze and a packed media presence. Cameras flashed. Reporters took notes. Champagne flowed. As Annika stood at the ribbon, a city councilwoman leaned over and whispered, "You're the first person I've heard talk about hotel branding like it's literature. That's refreshing." Annika smiled. People remember what makes them feel seen. A hotel should be a story they step into. After the ribbon was cut, the Garrison CEO raised his glass. "To Annika," he said. "For reminding us that brands don't grow from numbers. They grow from trust." Applause echoed across the marble lobby. Annika stood beside her team, eyes shining. In the days that followed, the media coverage praised the Marlowe's elegance, warmth, and thematic depth. One reviewer wrote, "It feels like the hotel read my favorite book and built itself just for me." Annika clipped that line and pinned it beside her desk. Later that month, she was invited to keynote the Global Hospitality and Design Conference in Lisbon. Her talk was titled, "The People You Fire Are Often the People You Should Have Listened to." The audience gave her a standing ovation. But Annika didn't take the stage to shame anyone. She took it to show what's possible when you design with integrity. On the 1-year anniversary of her termination, she wrote a personal blog post titled, "A Letter to the Woman I Was on That Zoom Call." She shared the fear, the shock, the rage, the resilience. It went viral within hours, shared by professionals, survivors, leaders, and working mothers across industries. One line in particular struck a chord. "The world may underestimate your effort, your pain, or your purpose. But if you know your worth, and you document your truth, eventually, the lies will collapse under their own weight." She never named Prestwell. She didn't need to. Her story wasn't about them anymore. It was about the life she chose to build beyond the breaking. As she watched the sun rise one morning over a new city, sketching ideas for a Paris launch, her phone buzzed. A message from Garrison's CEO. "Ready for Europe?" She smiled and replied, "Let's make it unforgettable." And she would. Because Annika Desai didn't just survive corporate betrayal and cancer. She built something stronger in its place. A legacy rooted in dignity. A future defined by choice. And a name, finally, written in full.